If you've ever been in your craft room and you keep thinking to yourself, why am I reorganizing the same stuff over and over again? I think I might have an answer for you. Hey, everybody, it's Whitney with Girl Friday Crafts. I am back with this week's organizing tip of the week. Wouldn't you all know that I actually tried to record this ahead of time and kept fumbling all over everything and said, you know what, forget it. I'm just doing it live. I'm better live, and then it's over and done, and no editing or anything like that. So happy to have you back for this week, and we are going to tackle the C and the R in my very own craft space organizing acronym, which is actually CRAFT, stands for categorize, reduce, assign a home, functional containers, and tune up. We're going to talk about C and R today. We will talk about A and F and a little bit of T next week. The T comes actually probably in March. We'll come back around to that because I think it takes a little bit of time working in your space to truly do that tune-up. We'll touch on it next week too. So just want to mention in the comments is the link to your handout or worksheet or whatever you want to call it for this week. It's a little cheat sheet for what we're going to talk about today. And to start off with, I would love to know your thoughts on week 1 and week 2. If you haven't watched those videos, you can find them here on my channel. Week 1, we talked about creating an organized only space, a designated space that you commit to keeping organized no matter what. And last week and week 2, we talked a little bit about focusing on one supply category to get some quick wins and dial down on the overwhelm that can often come with organizing our space. So if you've done any of that, I'd love to know what you think. Send me a comment. You can also email me, Whitney@girlfridaycrafts.com, and let me know how this process is going for you. So today we're going to talk about the C in the acronym, which is categorize. But we got to back up and talk for a second about the 2 different ways to organize your supplies, because the categorization is connected to that. And so there's 2 ways to organize your supplies and really sort of your room. One is by type and one is by function. Now, I'm going to talk probably a lot more about type because that is how I organize. But function is important. If organizing by function, think kindergarten classroom. So we'll talk about that too. If you have questions about organizing by function that I really don't go into, make sure to put those in the comments and I will be sure to address them. Neither way is right or wrong. There may actually be a combination of both in your own space. It's a matter of figuring out what works for you. There's some guidelines in the checklist about what might work best in which situation. We'll talk about that briefly before I sign off. But we're going to talk first about type. And so we touched on this a little bit last week. I used paper as an example, but this is where you organize all of your supplies by what they are. So all of your papers together, all of your paints together, all of your stickers and ephemera together in one location in your room. And this works well when you have a smaller space. This works well when you mix and match your supplies across all kinds of projects. So all of my mixed media artists out there. It also works well when you go back to my checklist, when you buy refills often. That was the other thing that I wanted to make sure went on this checklist. If you create a lot, like if you're producing a lot in terms of what you create, and so you're going through supplies frequently and having to buy replacements, it's easier to restock and know what you're low on if your supplies are all organized together. I hope that makes sense. And then you organize by function when you have a bigger space for a zone type layout. So think, you know, you have a painting area, you have a sewing area, you have a wood burning area, whatever your various craft activities are. But if you have a lot of space to spread out and have specific zones for that kind of activity, then a organizing by function system might work best for you. Organizing by function often works well when you repeat the same kinds of projects frequently or you batch create, so that you might be spending a week doing nothing but painting. And so it's just so much easier to have all your painting supplies together. So that is one of the first steps, is to then figure out what is best, like where your layout goes, where your supplies, sorry, I'm fumbling all over myself today. What works best for you in terms of how to organize your supplies? That's what I was trying to say. Is a organization by supply type going to work best for you, or organization by function, or some sort of hybrid? There's no right or wrong here. This is what makes the most sense to you. Then you are going to go through the categorization process. So I'm going to use organizing by type as the example because that's what I do. That's how I organize my space. And we're going to start with paper because I have a lot of it. So when I think about organization, that's what comes to mind. And so we are going to put all of our paper together. We're going to get all of our paper in one place. And we're going to go through and we're going to sort it. And so this is the process that I use for sorting, and this is what I use across all my supplies. So everything in my supplies pretty much is all sorted the same way. So all my papers are in the same place, and then they're divided. I don't have an alphabet section for paper. I do have an alphabet section for stickers. So if you're thinking about stickers or ephemera and you have alphabet stickers, you would have a section for that. And then you have by color. So I use basically the rainbow. If it's solid or if it's a pattern that has a predominant color, it goes that way, goes there, goes in my colors. And then by season, I think I touched on this a little bit last week. Winter, spring, summer, fall, holidays go in the appropriate season. So all my Christmas stuff is winter. It's debatable where Valentine's Day goes. Is that winter for you or is that spring for you? I think that's personal. It's winter for me. Winter for me is December, January, February. Like I know what months go in what categories, but it's what makes sense to you. And then by themes. And so again, your themes are very personal. It's something that you come up with for yourself. You can create a themes list. Next week, I will have a kind of a sample starting off point of a themes list for you all. And then you organize everything that way. And so common themes are animals or pets, events, so birthday, graduation, wedding. Another common theme is kids or family. Travel is another common theme. And so everything related to that gets divided. And so I have my next week we're going to do a little tour of my craft room, but I have my paper holders and I have tabs in them, and all the tabs are labeled by my themes. So all my animal paper, all of my travel paper, all of my events paper, and that makes it easy to find. And then everything is categorized the same way. So all of my stickers, all of my ephemera is all categorized in the same way that or all organized in the same way that I do my paper. Paints by color. If you grab the little handout for this week, you'll see on my website, there's a little pretty picture of all of my paints that are all nicely organized in rainbow colors. One, it's visually appealing when I open my closet, but two, it makes it really easy for me to realize when I am out of red paint. There's no sifting through. It's all the red paint's right there. If I'm running low or have used the last bottle, it's pretty easy for me to see that. And then you just sort of repeat that process. So yes, all of my beads are organized by color. Yes, all of my buttons are organized by color. Is it time consuming to get it that way? Yes, it is. Am I grateful? Is that a gift to my future self when I do it that way? Yes, it is. So that is your categorization. And again, if you are organizing by function, it's a similar process. All of your painting supplies go together. All of your sewing supplies go together. And then whatever other type of crafting that you do and you want to organize by that function, all of those supplies would go together. The next part of the craft acronym, and it's a word that as crafters we don't like very much, but it's reduce. So whatever word you use, destash, reduce, downsize, it makes us squeamish. It makes us squirrely. I've seen it in conversations with people that but I may need it someday, that sits in the back of our brain is not our friend. It's really not. We've got the key to organizing your craft space is to actually get your stash down to match your available space. And that is difficult. It's difficult for a lot of reasons. It's not just difficult because we might need it someday. There's a lot more to it than that. And we may talk about that in a future weekly video. I'm not going to get into the psychology of why we keep things and all of that right now, but there are some connections there. So what I recommend to make this process less painful is to do it as you categorize. I think it's important as you categorize to do a little bit of reducing, because then we're going to get into the functional container part, and you need to know what types of containers you need. If you're trying to assign stuff a home, you need to know how much available space you need. Getting your stash down to a realistic size, or a true size, a right size, is helpful in the latter part of this process. So small chunks of time is better. You don't get as overwhelmed. It's not as anxiety producing. I usually tell people to set a timer and stop when the timer goes off, unless you're just feeling super inspired to keep going. And don't do more than an hour at a stretch. If it's really anxiety producing for you, start with 10 or 15 minutes and then be done. You may need some boxes and some trash bags to put things in as you're sorting, but you're going to divide things into piles. Your keep pile, these are your no-brainers. These are the things you use regularly, the supplies that are 100% still your style, a special project that you've got going on that you're, working on every so often, or every week or every month, you're going to finish. Those are your keep supplies. Your donate or sell is usable items that no longer fit your style, that you have an excess of, things you just don't like anymore. And you can either donate those things to a school, to a craft supply restore if you have one, nursing homes. I mean, obviously, Goodwill, Salvation Army, those kinds of places, daycare centers. If you have a agency in your community that serves foster children, donating craft supplies to that agency is often very well received, because they use those things in group sessions and things like that. So it may seem like you don't have a lot of options on places to donate things, but there's a lot more options than what we think. So if you have suggestions, you have ideas, if there's been a surprise to you for where you could donate craft supplies in your community, drop it in the comments on the video so other people can see that. If you decide you want to sell your supplies, there's plenty of outlets for that as well. Facebook groups, whatnot. Some put together a craft supply yard sale, with some friends in your community. You can also sometimes take your craft supplies to crops or paper crafting events, things like that. And they might have a freebie table where you can put things out for people to take. And then you have a pile for trash. And this is the things that are broken, things that no longer work. When you get to this part in sorting your supplies, go through all your pens and markers, make sure they all work, throw away the ones that don't, those kinds of things. I did that once and cleaned out a whole drawer of a little 3-drawer storage container that had all of my Sharpies and markers and stuff in it. The goal is to make quick decisions about which supply goes in which pile. If you are truly unsure about an item, this is my suggestion. Have a 4th box. Put the item in that box. That box is to be stored somewhere other than your craft space, an attic, a basement, a closet. Give it to a friend if you need to. And you're going to put a date on that box, 6 to 9 months in advance. Write that date down somewhere, put it on your calendar, put it on your phone as a reminder. Anything that's still in that box when that date comes goes. Donate, sell, whatever. Because if you have not touched it in 6 to 9 months, more than likely you are not going to use it. I was doing some destashing earlier this year. No, not earlier this year, end of the year last year. I made a rule for myself for every one thing I kept, I had to get rid of 2 things. That was hard. And, I fudged a little bit on a few things, but I stuck to it pretty well and got 3-4 tubs worth of stuff down to like 1 or 2. And it was very cleansing. It's very therapeutic. If you know it's going to be difficult for you, get the help of a friend or a family member who is going to be your Marie Kondo and really force you to determine whether or not something brings you joy. But oftentimes, if you have to struggle over the decision, there's your decision. If it's not an immediate, yes, I'm keeping this, more than likely you can probably part with it. So a couple of things to remember here. Take it in small chunks. Be kind to yourself. Don't think you're going to go through, all of your paper stash if you're anything like me in just a few hours. You will get overwhelmed, you'll get tired, and you'll need a break. So it's important to remember that for yourself. If you can't explain why you're keeping something, that's often your answer. And make sure to get some help from a family member or a friend if you think you're going to need it to make some of these harder decisions. All right, so for this week, you have 2 jobs. 1, decide on type or function for your main supply categories. How are you going to organize? Are you going to organize by type or function? And then start small, start with 1 supply type or 1 area and begin to do a little bit of reducing that stash. I think you'll honestly be surprised at how refreshing it is and how much better it actually makes you feel about your space. We will talk about assigning those things a home and containerizing next week. Drop a comment and let me know what you decide on type or function. Let me know if you make any good progress on reducing your space. And I will be back next week. We'll do a little tour of my craft room and we'll talk about figuring out where to put all of those things and talk about different types of useful functional containers that you can pretty up when you want to, that are going to go a long way in making your craft space more functional. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I will talk to y'all later. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.